Hello, Shelley. How you doing?
There, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, awesome.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. How's the great Canada?
Oh, it's hot. I'm sure that's everywhere though. So
It's terrible down here, and
yeah,
so it's been like 116, 118.
yeah.
Although, do you guys do metric system or Celsius when you're in Canada?
It's metric here. Yeah.
It's metric. So you use Celsius, is that right?
What temperature is it today, Maureen?
28.
Celsius.
Yeah.
28 degrees Celsius-ish. Yeah. So I'm sure, like you're aware, in Arizona, right? So
It's
hot.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
funny. A lot of those northern cities I wouldn't think get real hot, but they really do. Minneapolis and some of those places get hot, and you wouldn't think so because you guys get so much snow.
Yeah, but yeah. I don't know. It gets pretty hot. And we live in an RV, so it's not like there's air conditioning. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, so you travel around
Yeah.
RV?
Yeah, mostly. Like we have a little cottage on the North Shore, but we rent that out in the summer for revenue. So yeah, and we do a lot of traveling and playing and catching shows. So the RV is the place to be.
That's awesome. That sounds fun.
It is awesome. Yeah. Yeah. We like it.
How's your gigs going? I know you've been traveling,
Oh,
haven't you?
yeah. We had a big tour in June, and then the last day of the tour, my fiddle player quit.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. But yeah, I spent money on photos and video and everything on the tour. She'd been trying to muster up the courage to tell me all tour because she has some anxiety issues. So yeah. Anyway, we found a replacement who we've been busy training and gigging with and doing all the things. So we found a replacement fairly quickly. There's a lot to learn for that person. So
Yeah.
constant rehearsals and then still trying to keep up with writing and all the stuff. But that's what I want to be doing, right? That's the music business. So
Hey man, you're living your dream.
right, yeah.
Be awesome. Most people can't say that.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So I clean cottages so I can do it, but whatever.
You know? Almost everybody I know has something that they do on the side, you know.
Right, exactly. You have to, pretty much.
Finding something that you don't mind too much, and that's not something too far out of your wheelhouse, right?
Well, my problem is finding something that I don't mind doing that doesn't put me in a position of management. Like I'm a natural manager, so I always end up in positions with a lot of responsibility because I'm good at it.
Oh, yeah.
But then that's just too much time away from what I want to be doing. So it's a constant struggle for me to find the thing. But whatever. I'm not crying about it. That's just a fact. That's all.
Sure.
I have to be aware of it all the time.
Kind of makes you appreciate doing music even more when you have to work at it that much harder.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah. What's up with you there?
Well, I've got 4 co-writes I'm in the middle of right now.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel like I kind of took off maybe a little more than I can chew, but I'm going to try my best to do it. Yeah, it's been really, really good. I have a goal of trying to get 8 songs out this year, 8 original songs. I've got 5 of them were released this year. I've had a single and then a little EP that was released. So I've got at least 3 more songs I've got to get out this year to make my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all sync friendly. So I'm going to start pitching and putting them out to music supervisors and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
This week I'm doing a lot of research, different music soups and licensing agents, that kind of thing.
I have a similar goal, actually. That's
dude.
my goal. Yeah, just in building my portfolio and focusing on, of course, sync-friendly stuff. So I've been hitting the co-writes pretty hard.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Who are you co-writing with? Is anybody?
Well, Robin Maurer-Vakil.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robin and I are doing a co-write. I'm really excited about that one.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just started a co-write with Thomas Amy. He's a new person for me. So we just started. I'm actually doing a co-write with one of my old bandmates here in Canada. So just not in the Access program at all.
Very cool.
But yeah.
What do you find to be the biggest challenge when you're doing a co-write?
What is the biggest challenge?
It's interesting to hear these people. Everybody has these stories about, really disastrous co-writes sometimes.
Well, I think it is about personalities, really. It's kind of like dating, right? Finding somebody that you jive with, that you can communicate with and make it as smooth as possible and exciting at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've often said I would rather work with somebody and co-write with somebody that has half the talent, but is so good to work with and just fun.
Yeah.
Work with somebody that's super talented, that's just, way too unflexible, like won't ever compromise on things. And because sometimes you're going to have creative differences and say, I think it needs to go this way and I think it needs to go this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a skill in learning how to say, okay, you know what, your idea probably is the right way to go. I need to put my idea down a little bit. And I don't know, there's just, those dynamics are really interesting to me.
I totally agree with you. It's 100%. Yeah, totally agree.
So if you ever have any tips on that, I'm always what people find to be, like little successes, like, I found that this really helps and this kind of communication.
Yeah. Well, the start everything with a compliment tip.
Yeah.
I love that. That is awesome. What would it sound like if we tried this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
another thing that I try to do. I often say to people, right off the bat, is say, okay, I heard what you just did, and I want to hear what you were thinking when you wrote that, because I want to fully understand before I start critiquing it.
Yeah.
But I think I want to understand what led you to write that little part, that kind of thing. And then sometimes it changes the way I think about it. I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing. If I would have just fired off, my thoughts and opinions on it, I am not judging it correctly.
That's a terrific way to approach it. Now, here's a question along the same vein. If you're working with somebody who doesn't think to approach feedback that way, if you're working with somebody who maybe just launches into a critique without taking into account what you were trying to think.
Right.
How do you respond to that without getting, it's a sensitivity issue, so you don't want to get too sensitive. You want to honor the fact that the feedback is probably valid, but wasn't handled super well. And maybe it's not even good feedback. There's all the things, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
So how do you do that?
I don't know the answer except communicate a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
We got several people on. Hey, Kate. Hey, Ernest. Hey, Alex. What's going on, guys? I love the backdrop. So we've got this cool wall on Kate's screen. And we've got this like outdoorsy backyard hammock feel on Ernest's screen. I love it. And Alex, you have a video, or are we going to just see your name? That's totally fine.
Probably just going to see my name because I'm nowhere near a shirt and I don't feel like putting one on.
All right.
Me either, Alex. I'm not putting a shirt on.
High five. Shirtlessness is the way to go. It's summer. It's like 90 degrees here. I don't want to turn on the air conditioning. Yeah.
This is becoming the Naked Podcast.
You'll get higher ratings.
Yeah. Viral. Well, what's going on? Alex, do you have any thoughts or questions? What's going on with you?
What is going on with me? No, I don't know. I'm exploring a weird sound right now where, like, because of that rolly thing I have, I'm able to make things sound organic. And so I don't know. I'm weirded out by whatever I'm doing on this new song. But besides that, I don't know.
Alex is talking about a keyboard he has. It's called the Rolly keyboard.
I was going to ask, what's that Rolly thing?
Yeah, it's just super expressive. So like I created this like bass line that's, I don't know, I'm just used, like, I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't sound 100% natural. So it's like I don't know what direction to take the song. I don't know if I should keep it like a sort of raw organic vibe or if I should like really infuse the electronic vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I can't wait to have you show it to us. Will you give us a little demo or show it off sometime in our class?
I will, or I could share. I just finished up, I think, 2 songs in the last week and a half. I can share some of those. One of them's pretty awesome. I'm excited about it. Yeah, I could do that. That'd be awesome.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Ernest, what's happening?
Well, a couple of things. First, the big thing now is for me to figure out key switches. Like, so I started working on this piece that is something that I orchestrated a few years ago for a whole symphony orchestra, right? And I figured, okay, it's not, I composed it, but I orchestrated it. But the recording that I have is not a great recording. It was due to various reasons. The orchestra was under-rehearsed, the concert hall itself, sort of a recording. And a producer had said, no, you should, this is a really great piece, but you should really go in and do a virtual orchestra and do that. And so I thought, okay, well, that's going to be my first big project, right, with Pro Tools and everything like that. But it's monstrous because you're talking about a full orchestra. And so even with just starting looking at the flutes, I'm like, wow, okay, well, there's this flute patch and that flute patch and that flute patch. And this is a legato and this is a staccato and this is slurred and this isn't slurred and this. So which you use a lot of them when you do these things. So I thought, so that it became really clear to me really quickly that I have to learn how to use key switches and figure that out so that I can put a flute that has 4 different potential patches on it all on one track, rather than 4 tracks, 5 tracks for a single instrument multiplied times 30 different instruments or something. You know, that's not going to be good.
Do you want to tell everybody real quick what key switching is?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just learning it myself. But my understanding of the concept is that you have a MIDI keyboard and one of the keys on there that's not in the range of the instrument itself, which makes it helpful if you have a larger keyboard. Like mine is 49 keys. So I let's say
there.
It's an key. It's telling MIDI, oh, he wants this particular legato patch. And then if I hit the D below what the flute can play, it'll play a staccato note or something like that. So that way you can switch between the different patches, but all on one track. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a way of controlling CC information. You know, the CC is it's kind of like the extra information in MIDI beside the note. So it could be pitch, it could be vibrato, it could be controlling other things within that instrument. But key switching is just a way of doing that on the fly and having the control right there on the keyboard, usually in the lower notes. But yeah, it's really quite cool when you have an instrument that really utilizes that, because you're not just using the wheel or the pitch wheel or the mod wheel. You're switching between, again, like you said, legato or staccato or spiccato. Is that right?
Well, that would be a violin thing, but yes.
Okay. Anyway, that's really cool. So which flute VI are you using?
So it's all part of East West Diamond Hollywood Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's
And that stuff.
Sorry.
Do you like their stuff, the East Wind? You just got it, right? I guess we're having trouble with your internet, buddy.
Sorry about that unstable internet. Yes, their stuff is really good. I mean, it's when I asked people here and in the Axis course and everything, I got sort of a mix between East West and Spitfire, and then if you have a lot of money, sure, you can go up to the Vienna Philharmonic or something.
Sure.
But Spitfire was about double the price of East West, and I couldn't find a significant campaign for people that thought Spitfire over East West. The biggest advantage that Spitfire would have is that it runs in the contact engine, whereas East West has its own engine and it's slower to load up and things like that.
Gotcha. Yeah,
but it's half the price.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. We can't wait to get some. I want to hear what you do with it. That's really neat.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. And the other thing that I'm still thinking about is something that happened at the Access event. It was it's something that I kind of knew in my head, but it was really amazing to see it happen live, which was at the end of one of the 2 days when Kathy, allowed people that weren't doing a one-on-one to have their piece played for the entire group, and then whichever panelists were there could comment on it. Somebody was brave enough, and thank heavens they were, to say, "Look, I have just a working demo. Is it okay if I play that?" And then she said, "Sure." And so she played it, and I think it was basically a guitar vocal kind of thing, right? And so the piece finishes, and everybody up on the panel said, "Well, gee, I really don't know. I mean, it kind of depends on the production and where this thing goes, if it's this kind of thing or that kind of thing." Really, nobody had anything to say about the actual songwriting. It was, and then somebody later said, "Oh, well, it's 80% production, 20% lyric." And I was like, wow, man, that, like, in the old days of country and certainly even today in theater, that would never fly. If the song isn't strong as a song, you're not going to spend the money to produce it. You're just not going to do that.
Right.
And so that was an eye opener, and which is why I knew I needed to do Triple Threat. So there you go.
It is amazing, the production, especially in that style of music. I mean, we're not talking, like Broadway would be totally different, or a classical type piece. And they're still. I
feel like I disagree because I just watched Rent the other day and it was awful. Every song was awful in Rent.
Well, I
agree with you about that.
I don't understand how it's like a popular Broadway musical, but I don't know. Anyway.
You can't go by the movie. The movie's not good. Don't watch the movie.
Okay, so the movie's awful, and somehow I don't know all of it. But they didn't change the songs in the movie, did they?
No.
I haven't seen it, but every account is like, "Don't watch the movie. It's bad. It's bad. It's not representative of the show."
All right, maybe one day. The songs were so awful. I don't know. I don't know that I would spend the money on the live one now that I've seen the movie.
I saw it live one time, and I did not like it at all. I like what it stands for. It's all about equality and diversity, and I love that. But I just thought it felt really, it's just compared to some of the other plays that are out there that are, to me, way better. I was pretty disappointed in it.
Well, the funny thing is that prior to writing Rent, because he died during production of it. Prior to that, he'd written a whole other show, and I got to work on that show when somebody decided to do sort of a, revival of it. But it was very bad because this was 2002, and they decided to send us the musical material through the U.S. Postal Service. And so the package was just basically given the words of the title of the play, which were "Tick, Tick, Boom."
Oh.
Post office was not amused.
Oh, geez.
Especially in New York. not amused.
Mm. But going back to what you said, so much. There's a phrase that has always stuck with me, and it was a phrase that Dave Pensato, who's one of the best mixing engineers in LA, who's done everybody for years. He's kind of an old school mixing engineer, but still incredibly good. He's got a great show called Pensato's Place, which is like a video podcast that you can watch every week where he interviews other engineers. It's all about the engineering world of music, and it's phenomenal. It's a really, really good show if you guys ever are curious about that. But one of the things he said that I hated when he said it was, it's better to sound current than good. And that's always stuck with me. And I hate that, but it's also true. And sometimes and this is mainly about gaining popularity, gaining fans, making money. You're not doing it for the art. You're doing it for success. And if you're trying to do it for success, sometimes there's a compromise that sometimes is required or sometimes is asked of you to just sound very current and not necessarily be clever or interesting or poetic. And you've got to make that determination whether you can make those compromises.
Oh yeah. Kathy went on about that, about in the lyric, don't be clever, don't be subtle, don't be, keep it really simple.
Subtlety is not rewarded. Yeah, totally agree. Hey, Jeb, we got Jeb on here. Kate, did you have anything you wanted to ask about? I love this wall you're hanging out at. I'm going to unmute you here. I think we're both unmuting. Okay, you do it. You unmute.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I muted it super loud here, so.
Okay.
Like, everywhere I go, like, there's the bus, like, there's a helicopter, like, it's just loud.
It looks like you're in Amsterdam or something.
No, Cambridge.
Cambridge? Oh, same thing.
Minus the red light district.
Yeah, exactly. Minus all the weed. Well, maybe not. Well, did you have a question or just listening in?
No, I'm just popping on. I feel like I haven't been forever, so.
I love it. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you. I haven't seen you since LA.
I know, and we barely got to talk. I was bummed about that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you were there, though. Did you have a great time?
Yeah, it was great.
Cool.
Definitely great.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. All right. So like I said, super loud, so I was just popping on to listen and hang out with you guys for a bit.
Not a problem. Jeb, what's going on? Do you have a question? I have something I want to talk about, but I just want to make sure that you guys get a chance to ask a question if you want to.
I am.
Hey, man.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. What's new?
Just busy. Lots of co-writes and collaborations right now. I met a guy from Kathy's Access course while I was in LA that he's been in her class for like 6 months. His name's Brad Elliott, and he lives like half a mile from me. And so the other day he called me up and he said, we got to go have a beer. So we went and listened to some live music a couple days ago and just had some beers, and it was really cool. But it's just amazing to me that there's somebody this close, because I always think of myself living all by myself. Phoenix is not really a music city. It's a huge city, but it's just, it's not LA or New York or Nashville or whatever, or Atlanta. But man, I don't know why I told you that, but what's going on, Jeff?
I don't know, maybe because I have roots in Arizona.
Yeah,
right.
Are you coming back?
I've been back a couple times, but to Tucson, so it's kind of a little further away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been back. I did some work out there. A lot of musical stuff happening down there for me. Some co-writes. I was there with my father, and I actually are working on a co-write together. He's
no kidding.
He made his living. He raised the family as a songwriter. That was his thing. And we're actually working on a trap song together, believe it or not.
Shut up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How does is he listen to trap music, or are you saying, hey, I need these parts?
No, it's sort of I've pretty much designed it, but he's such a great poet. I mean, if he can write in the style of rap, essentially. I mean, because he's super wired. Like he can riff, you know. And he's 83 years old, by the way. He just turned 83 yesterday, and we recorded his vocal, the hook. He's singing, and we auto-tuned his voice like really deeply. It's so great. I'll share it with you guys on the page at some point. Yeah.
I would love that. That is a unique situation.
Yeah.
You grow up writing songs with him or playing songs and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So he taught you, kind of got you introduced to keys and guitars and stuff.
I mean, just to have the instruments around, it was a very musical household. So, you know, the upright piano in my home was the place I went and sat instead of doing homework for hours, you know, as a kid. So that's why the bug bit me.
That's badass. And he lives in Tucson then?
No, there's a reunion we go back for every summer. I don't know, you may be familiar with his organization. They're called Up With People.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was one of the founders of that group.
No way.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, he Up With People was one of the first groups to play the Super Bowl halftimes back in the early 80s before the big stars played.
Really?
Yeah. And they have a reunion every year, and I go down for that. And I've been doing some co-writing for their organization as well. So that's a new thing I'm working on with them.
I did some volunteer work one time with them, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but it's for kids, isn't it? Some kind of dance thing?
It's for youth. Yeah. Ages 18 to 26.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the people I went to university with recently, she actually went out and she was working with Up With People as like a choir director kind of person. It's like, wow.
Yeah, they boast like 50,000 alumni worldwide. So yeah, there's a lot of people.
Wow.
Involved.
That's awesome.
As far as like, you know, and they're really the kind of music they write. I've heard, I mean, you listen to a lot of their music, it's all very like syncable.
Oh, really?
It's all about these, they use these universal themes and it's all very positive and uplifting. So yeah.
That's cool. Are you doing any co-writes right now with people from the Access class?
Alex Helton and I are working on a song. We're not, we haven't met up in a while, but you know, he's on the West Coast, of course. So we do a Skype session every now and then.
Nice.
Now the Access course, do you know Gary Garrett? Is she in that course?
I don't know. Her name is Gary?
Gary, yeah. Gari.
Oh.
Yeah, we're working on a tune together. Yeah, so I have some projects I'm working on.
Okay.
I continue to struggle with my DAW issue because I'm I've been using that Soundtrap cloud-based stuff, which is fine for crafting a song, but then for bringing it to a production level,
Yeah.
I'm still so I'm like ready to pounce, man, on like this week or next on finally just biting the bullet and getting the laptop. And I'm between the DAWs, like Ableton. I love the idea of it, but I tried it once and it just like the learning curve was just so deep for me because I'm so used to the interface of Pro Tools.
Yeah. Definitely go where you think you need to go. You know, if you're drawn to Pro Tools, do it. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. My only thing is, I would say if you're gonna get away from Soundtrap, which is probably a great place to start, by the way, if you're gonna go toward a bigger DAW, go toward one of the main ones, which is either Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, Studio One is now a big player. I would say one of those. Now there's Reaper you could go to, which is I think a little bit of more of an EDM kind of thing. There are Cubase. Cubase is another one of the big ones.
Yeah.
Fruity Loops, which I don't think is one of the big ones. You hear about it every once in a while.
Yeah.
Sonar, which is the old Cakewalk. But I would stick with either Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, or Cubase. Those four. One of those. Those are the ones you're constantly seeing the big people. That way, as you're growing and you're getting more and more into other studios and stuff, you probably are going to run into a lot of other people using that same tool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I mean, if Pro Tools is where you're drawn toward, definitely. My only issue with Pro Tools is, and I don't know if they've ever resolved this, is you have to have an iLock with it when you use it. Now, they may have changed that. Do you guys know?
What is an iLock?
iLock is a USB stick. It's a key. You can't even load up Pro Tools unless you have that put into a USB port.
I think iLock has evolved to also just be an online authentication, Zion.
Okay, so you don't have a physical iLock anymore?
You can do either or, I believe.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I took Pro Tools for a spin when I was deciding if I was going to switch from Studio One, which I love, by the way, Jeb. Studio One gets a big thumbs up from me. Super user-friendly. But anyway, yeah, iLock, I think, is also online authentication. You just need an account.
Okay. Well, and if that's true, then that takes care of that issue. I used to have Pro Tools back in the day, and I hated how much authentication they wanted for everything. You couldn't just load it up. You couldn't just grab your Pro Tools and put it on another computer in your house. Everything was so locked down and secure because they were, worried about people pirating their software and stuff. And I get it, but it was overkill in my opinion. And so I hated having to bring that stupid iLock thing around with me everywhere. If I forget it, then it's like, oh crap, I can't even load my session. So yeah.
I think that's why. I think that is why. I think Shelley's right. I think that's why they made it so that you could do it online for exactly that portable issue. Although the new iLock keys are really small, and I have I don't know what you call it, like a power strip for USBs, right? So I have several USBs all plugged into this strip, and that little iLock is just one of them, and so it's like an issue.
Yeah. Very cool. I was going to say you might also, before you lock it down. If I were choosing, I would probably go. Well, I'm biased toward Ableton, but if I didn't go Ableton, I would go Logic personally, just because it's Apple based and it works with GarageBand. So if you were working on someone's laptop and started messing around in GarageBand, which comes with I think almost every Mac, they have like a basic version of GarageBand. You can pull that into Logic really easily.
Okay.
So I like that aspect of it. But I was going to say you might want to. You might want to look at some YouTube videos, comparing the different ones together and saying, hey, this is the latest Pro Tools, this is the latest Logic. What are the advantages and disadvantages? And it might lend itself. Back in the day, Ableton used to be very specific toward live performances and more electronic stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not at all anymore. It's extremely versatile for any situation. Pro Tools and Logic have a little bit better, like if you're doing a lot of vocals and you're comping vocals, that process of comping vocals can be tedious. And they have some, from what I understand, I hear that they have some better sort of layouts and processes to comp vocals together. But I will say they're all looking at each other all the time and making adjustments and updates. So I just got the new Ableton 9 and it's got tons of great features I love. It is probably the ugliest DAW. Ableton is not a very pretty DAW, but I love it. It just does exactly what I want it to do.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm very curious what you end up going with. Please let us know because I want to see. I want to see what's going on.
I certainly will. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to talk real quick about gates and the use of gates in production. So gating is just
not Manafort gates, right?
No. Not Watergate either. Not Bill Gates.
Manafort Gates.
Manafort Gates. Paul Manafort. So I wanted to show you guys just a real quick. Do you guys ever use Gates? Yes, no. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
Not really. You're going to have to take.
Wait.
I've used a gate before.
Okay. Cool. So it's basically a way of showing. Let me share my screen here for you. It's just a way of controlling audio in a way it's actually really simple, but I think it's one of those things that often gets overlooked and people don't really know it's there. So if you just type in Gates into Google and just find some, there's always these better diagrams than I could come up with. So before a gate and after a gate. So all it is just, it's a way of turning off. If I had the control knob, like I had my finger on the fader and I just turned the fader down anytime somebody wasn't speaking. But as soon as they started talking, I pulled it back up. That way, any kind of noise in the background just gets gated out. A gate is just saying, I will allow this audio to go through. Once it gets above this dB, I'll keep the gate open, but once it stops and falls away, I'm going to close that gate so that no audio can come through. Now, this is really important if you've got a poor audio recording of somebody trying to record vocals, but there's a lot of hiss or something in the background, so that, or room noise. This is really good for live performances. So the gate is activated before I'm singing. If I'm the lead singer and I've got my microphone, it's activated. So when I go to sing, it detects a spike in the audio in the decibel level, and it opens the microphone, allows me to speak, to sing, and as soon as I stop, it closes it so that all the background noise doesn't get in the microphone. So it's pretty simple. So let me show you real quick how it works. Let me just load up I just want to load up Ableton, my ugly DAW. Nobody laugh at my DAW, okay? And I'm going to have to change the audio to come out of, let's see, Zoom. All right. So I don't even know what song this is. What song is this?
Hope you're ready for it.
Can you hear that at all? Okay, well, it's kind of trap, actually. So if I'm trying to put in, this is Brittany singing here, and if I click this
is happening now.
Here's her vocal.
This is happening now.
Now I've chopped her vocal quite a bit here, but let me just throw a gate on here just to show you what I'm talking about. And I'm going to use just a super basic gate. Here we go. And let's do it in a verse area. Let's find a verse, actually. I'm going to put it here. And okay. So here is my gate down here. Can you see this little area down here? Now I have this threshold meter, which means I get to determine when the gate activates. So if I have the threshold really loud, it probably won't even be activated, and I'll hit play. Here's the audio down here. You can't even hear it because it's not hitting the gate. If I turn it all the way down,
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna focus on the shade or the YouTube comments.
Okay, so you can hear everything, but if I started to turn the gate up, it only allows the audio to activate when it comes through that.
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna focus on the shade or the YouTube comments.
So as soon as her voice ducks down below that threshold, it cuts it off. So again, this is great again for it's a way of cleaning up your sound. If you've got a messy guitar, if you've got a messy just track, a background track, it's a way of doing that. Now there's something you need to understand, and that's the attack, hold, and release knobs. So just like an envelope on a synthesizer, just think, or a compressor, just think of your attack as how fast do you want it to happen. So if I play this but have a slow attack, it's going to wait a couple milliseconds before, or 90 milliseconds before it allows the gate to open, even after it goes past the threshold.
I can take some risk.
Let's crank this.
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna.
So it's cutting off the beginnings, those transients of her words at the beginning, because she's got to be above that threshold for 23 milliseconds, which is pretty fast, but before it opens the gate. Why would you use that? Well, let's see here. If somebody was, every time they talked, they had a weird thing in their voice like that before they started speaking, you may not want that to come through, and only come through once they're really talking. That's a bad example, but you might think of a better example. But
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches.
You can hear her. So that doesn't sound natural. I wouldn't ever do that with this. I usually have the attack pretty freaking fast. Hold is how long you want it to be open, even after she drops off. I can't remember if it's hold or release. Alex, help me out if I'm saying something wrong here. So if I crank the hold, let's see, if the hold is really fast, that means it's going to keep the gate open, and it's going to close the gate immediately right after it falls through the threshold. And release, I can't remember the difference between these two knobs. I got to look it up again, but I can. I just want you to be aware of those knobs, because those are the big ones you're going to look into. Threshold, again, is the biggest knob you're going to usually use. Does that make sense? It's just a way of cleaning up sound. Now, you can, a lot of times with gates, you can do a side chain on a gate. Now, what is that? Side chaining, anytime you hear the word side chain, don't be thrown by that. Don't feel overwhelmed by that, because it used to overwhelm me. I'm always like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You start using the word side chain and then you're losing me. Whenever you hear side chain, all it is saying, I'm going to control this parameter based on something else happening. That's all it means. I'm going to control this track or this tool, and I'm going to chain it to something else happening over here. So a great example is in compressors. You can say, I want this compressor to really compress that track, but only when the kick drum hits. So I'm going to be looking at the kick drum, and whenever the kick drum goes, boom, I'm going to compress. That's side chaining. That's the most common use of side chaining. You can side chain with a gate too. So you could have a side chain, and I could say every time, and I'll show you real quick how this would work. If I've got this track here, and this is like a little percussive thing. Okay, now I'm going to crank that up. All right, I'm going to side chain my gate to that track. So go back to that track in the, where is it? Here it is. This is my gate, and I'm going to say I want to control this gate based on that track. And I think it was called Ableton Drum Set. So you have to select Ableton Drum Set. That was the one. So every time it plays, it's going to affect this gate. And it probably is going to sound horrible, but so now I'm going to put this on too. So it is basically, and it depends on how you can reverse it too, so that I can hit flip here, and now it'll open her vocal every time the hits are not playing.
I can take some risk. I can take a few YouTube comments. I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna focus on YouTube comments.
Okay, so this is not something you would ever probably do in this scenario because this sounds pretty terrible. But I'm just trying to show you that I'm controlling one thing. I can control my gate and play around with it. It's all about playing around, finessing it. But I can control it so that it only gates when it hears a different sound, or it only releases the gate when it hears a different sound. So that you can do it either way. So people use gates to, for instance, let's say I have a delay. Okay, let's actually do this real quick. I'm going to take this gate off because it's terrible. And I'm going to, here's my verse. I'm going to create a return track. So you guys understand, like, return tracks, also called auxiliary tracks. It's just like another track on your DAW that's allowing you to put effects on it. And so I'm going to create a return track down here. We're going to just call this delay gated. I'm just going to name it, okay? And I'm going to put a delay on this track, like something nice and big. EQ glue echo. I think that's what they call it on theirs. Delay is often called echo, and echo is often called delay.
I can take some.
And now I'm going to crank. I'm going to send. Oops, not this one. In my DAW, it looks probably kind of weird, but in my DAW, I have these auxiliary channels. So I'm sending the audio from this track here, this group of tracks, to this delay.
I can take some risks. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna focus on the shade or the YouTube.
So you can hear that delay, right? You can hear that. It's massive amounts of delay. So now I'm going to put a gate on this and only allow this delay to come through when she pauses. So when she stops talking or stops singing for just a second, I'll allow the echo to come through. But as soon as she starts singing, I want to squish that echo. I don't want it to come through. You could do this with either compressor or you could do it with a gate. So we're going to do it with a gate. So I'm going to drop this gate here. And first of all, I want to solo up just the gate and see here how it sounds. It's not going to let me.
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches.
Let's see here.
I can take some risk.
Okay, so I'm going to crank the threshold down.
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches.
Okay, so I've allowed the gate to open up, which is saying it's looking at any audio coming out of the echo, and it's using that. Now I'm going to flip it, and so what I'm doing is saying I'm only going to allow the gate to open when her voice is coming through. I think. Let me make sure I'm doing this right.
I can take some risk.
And now
I can take some risk. I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never.
Let's go down here.
I can take some risk. I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna.
Maybe I did it the wrong way.
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna focus on the shade or the YouTube comments.
Ah, crap. I'm not doing this right somehow.
I can
Here. I want to open the gate when she stops singing. So the audio's coming through. Oh, I'm not sidechaining. That's what the problem is. Duh. So I go to Brit Verses here. So I'm saying when she comes through,
I can take some risk.
I want to only have this gate open up when she comes through.
I can take some risk. I can take.
So I'm going to flip that now.
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna focus on the shade or the YouTube comments.
Okay, now it's doing it. So I'm going to.
I can take some risk. I can take a few punches.
Now I'm going to change. I'm messing around with a threshold because I'm trying to find that sweet spot to where it sounds more natural.
I can take some risk. I can take some risk. I can take a few punches. I'm never gonna focus on the shade or the YouTube comments.
So this would be better with a compressor, but I'm trying to use a gate to do it. I'm probably losing you guys. You're like, the point of this is you can control something based on another thing's behavior using sidechain. And if you have to draw it out or write it out or map it out, that helps sometimes too. But I'm just showing you using a gate it's a way of bringing audio in and out. Does that make sense? That's all it is. Just saying, it's just opening a gate and saying, okay, you can come through. And all the little parameters on a gate, and yours is going to look different from mine, but all your little parameters are just dictating how fast those doors open and how fast they close.
Yeah. So I get that part. What I don't understand about side chaining is why. I mean, why can't you just do that on the actual track that you want to affect? What is the advantage of having it somewhere else on an auxiliary track or something?
So I'm using this as an example of doing it on an auxiliary track, but let me show you where you would do it in a different manner. Okay. The advantage is convenience. If I'm trying to, for instance, I've got a synthesizer going. Let me just show you an example. So that's probably the best way to do this. So in this track here, I've got these,
Can I add an idea?
Go ahead.
Okay. So like in dance music, you might want your bass to be really low endy and your kick to be really low end. But if they're both going at the same time, you're going to get a muddy effect. So what you can do is throw that side chain on your bass so that it ducks out when the kick comes in, and they can both still occupy that low end area without hitting each other in the face. So that's one why you would use side chaining, like on a compressor. It's the convenience of not having to automate the volume down on the bass every time a kick comes in.
Right. So it allows separation in a mix setting so that if the bass is really prevalent, it lets the kick drum kind of say, hey, I'm going to come out a little bit. But if the bass isn't there, the kick drum comes back in so that they're not competing for those frequencies. That's what he's saying. So let me show you real quick where that would apply.
Hope you're ready for it.
So I have this sound here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sound, and every time the kick happens, I'm going to duck it. I'm going to pull it down just for an effect. I'm just going to say every time the kick comes in, doom, doom, doom. Let me see where the kick is. Here it is. Okay, so there's the kick. So it's called deep kick. So I'm going to drop a compressor on this and compressor. Just drop it right here, just on the very end of it. And I'm going to side chain it to that deep kick. Deep kick. There we go. Okay, so now when I hit play, you're going to see that coming in. So now I'm going to pull the threshold down. I'm going to crank the ratio. I'm going to make the attack really fast, the release pretty fast.
You're ready for it.
And a lot of this takes just some finessing. I'm going to just solo the kick and that sound. Sounds kind of bad, but you're getting the effect. Every time it hears that kick over on the other track, it's trying to pull it down. But there's so many kicks that, so if I simplified the kick pattern real quick, and let's just take these off. See how they're affecting one another? I'm getting some distortion and stuff, and I don't have time to really finesse this, but it's just a way, again, of I'm compressing this track every time the kick happens. So you can use that in instances. It's great for mixing, like what Alex was saying, where you're saying, I'm going to pull these frequencies down. And there's something called, it's a type of compression where you're only compressing just a frequency band. Help me out. Multi-band compressor. So you can have a compressor that instead of compressing the entire track, it's just compressing one frequency out of that. It's kind of ducking that frequency every time this instrument's coming in.
It's essentially like a de-esser, only wherever you want it.
Yep, exactly. And that's what a de-esser just is. It's just a compressor just in one band, or just in that that high pass area of the frequencies. Does that make sense, Ernest? Excuse me. Okay, cool. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about gates. I wanted to kind of fill you guys in and just say, don't be afraid of them. Use them, especially for just controlling audio. Anytime you record somebody, I often go through their audio track and I just cut out any area where they're not singing, so I don't even have to gate it. But if you're lazy and don't want to do that, or if you're more efficient, I should say, you can throw a gate on there, and then anytime they're not singing, it cuts that out. The problem is sometimes a vocalist will have little inflections in their voice, like or something like that, and you may want to keep those, and if a gate was on there, it would cut those out. And so if you just slapped a gate on there, you might be losing some of those little nuances.
Yeah, those things humanize people.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to keep those in there. So I typically I have the singers I use usually record well enough to where there's not a lot of background noise in the background. They call that sometimes the noise floor. I don't like to have that in my track, but normally that's pretty clean, so I don't even need to worry about that. I just grab the vocal pieces I want, put them in, comp the vocal. But that way I'm not missing out on those little nuggets of growls and grovels and things like that. But anyway, that's how to use it. So with that, I think I'm going to sign off unless anybody has any more questions or wants to say anything.
I'm going to ask a stupid question. You've used the phrase comp the vocals a few times now.
Yeah.
Please define, is that compile, press, what is that?
Great question. Yeah, it is compile. It's not compressing. So, or compilation. So you're talking about just taking the best vocal takes after a session of recording, just like you would, the best trumpet takes, after a performance, and you're putting them together to piece it together to make the best. Okay, no problem, Shelley. You're taking it and putting it together to make the best track you can. And some people there's some opinions on that, and some strong opinions. Some people think, unless the singer can sing it perfectly all the way through, they shouldn't be singing this. And to piece things together is sort of cheating, because you're taking the very best of each. Have you ever played golf where you have a team of people, and we used to do this at the corporation I used to work for. I can't remember what they call it, but you get a group of people, all these teams, and you take the best strokes from every hole that you go to. That sounds horrible. So on the ninth hole, if if Charlie hit a hole in one, then you take that stroke from that hole. What am I, 12? Jesus. So That is how. So it's kind of the same thing with when you're comping vocals. You're saying the singer's going to sing this verse 18 times. I'm going to take the best one or the best first part of that and the second part of this verse, put those together. But the challenge with that is making it all blend together really well. If when you're starting to comp vocals, you can do it to the point where it doesn't sound natural because she's saying it with energy here, and then she was relaxed here, and then over here she was away from the mic, and then you try to comp those all together. And even though the performance was amazing on all of those, it doesn't sound natural because it sounds like she's all over the place. So to really get a good comp, and again, it's just the lingo, you need to have her sing it very consistently on every take so that you can comp those vocals together. So I'm a big believer in comping vocals and doing it well, because you can make your track sound incredible. And a lot of people they try to just say, well, I'm just going to bypass that process that takes too much work, and I'm just going to have my singer do it amazingly. I'm just going to take her one best take. Well, awesome. If she's amazing, great. But most singers aren't that perfect, and they'll do this verse amazingly well in this take, and the next take they'll do this verse amazingly well. And I have no problem with taking the best of the best and putting them together, and bada bing, bada boom. So yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. Alex, it's good to hear from you. Ernest, it's good to see you. I'm so glad we finally met in LA. It was a lot of fun. And are you going to go to November?
No, I don't think I can make November, but because I'm still trying to assess the financial damage from.
No.
But and I honestly, a lot of what was said out there was stuff that has kind of come up before. But I mean, it was great seeing it and hearing it in a live context, and it had more impact that way. And I was like taking notes furiously, and all that. So, but I mean, when I look back on it, it's like most of what was said was stuff that was said before, but certainly the human interaction and all that stuff was really great. And so, I'd like to do it again next year, but maybe not quite this quickly.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
If it weren't so close to me, I probably would do the same thing, but I have no excuse. It's just 4 hours away.
Yeah. And also too, I mean, I want to, between now and November, that's not enough time for me to really put together a catalog, as it were.
Yeah.
Give me a year. Hopefully I'll have stuff together.
Cool. Awesome. All right, man. Well, have a great week, guys. And I will be in touch, and we'll talk.
All right. See ya.
See you on the group. Later, guys.